Hello and welcome to our presentation on continuous delivery. My name is Matt Vanderkooy and I'm the Director of Customer Success at ERP-One. Hopefully by now we've all heard about continuous delivery for JD Edwards. And in the next 45 minutes or so, I hope to give you some ideas about why it's important and how you might build and apply a strategy for continuous delivery at your organization. A quick word about ERP-One. This is the crux of who we are. This is our job, and we hope that this presentation will help you discover ways of making JDE work better and harder for you. So Oracle's new JDE release delivery strategy. This is a big change. This is something that's moving us away from the large upgrade projects, implementation projects, and into something that we're just more continuously adopting change. And we want to pose a few questions about why you should adopt continuous delivery. I'm sure many of you have heard of Simon Sinek. A great TED Talk, by the way, look it up. It's about knowing your why. And as we move through this presentation, we'll start to talk about some of the hows and the strategies for going about this, but I think it's helpful to understand why you want to adopt continuous. Overall, as you know, with taking JD Edwards updates, whether small or large, there's a balance of risk or reward. The first sort of reward that we would categorize here would be the ability to retain some resources. So happy staff get to use and leverage the new technology for their jobs. Younger staff coming into the workforce, almost expecting some of this technology to be readily available to them. And with the new tools within JD Edwards, we can help deliver that. We can help enable technology. The JD Edwards of old, where you had to be sitting at a computer connected to a terminal server, that's gone. JD Edwards as an engine that enables technology out in the field for all of your users, that's there. And by taking some of the later code releases and technology packs, we can start to enable that technology across the organization, moving JD Edwards outside of the office and also moving data in and out between systems. There's some basic functionality, enhancements, and regulatory functionality that keep getting delivered through the updates to the system that just will make it easier for you to apply those throughout this whole continuous delivery model. And it's going to help reduce risk. So getting you behind on technology, security on those systems and other platforms that JDE relies on. By again staying up to date and current with the code and the tools, you'll be able to make sure that you stay compliant through the security across your platforms and different bits of technology that interact with JD Edwards. So of course there's a balance between risk and reward with this, and it's just important for you to have an understanding of some of what the risks and the rewards are in all of this. Okay, and so then we get to this question of, can continuous delivery leverage the development cycle of E1? This is what we know, right? So here's the basics, the Oracle roadmap. What we know in the past with major code releases every number of years, that's gone away, and they've gone more to a feature pack and an update perspective. So roughly quarterly on the feature packs, roughly annually on the updates. And do we need to know about what a future code line is? Okay, those are all sort of questions that we need to wrestle with when we look at this Oracle roadmap that gets presented to us, and a way that we need to start to shift our way of thinking and understand where Oracle's going with it, and then line up our organizations to match. Probably seen these slides before, some of the quarterly feature releases across the 9.2 code line. So this was basically across 2018, quickly across 2018. We're in the middle of 18 now. Lots of this has been delivered. and some of the stuff that's planned and under research. Okay, um, now we're headed on into the future. What does all of this look like? So to recap, features quarterly includes lots of technology, lots of functionality, tools, and then upgrades. So as needed, and this really is just a consolidation of the various feature packs, again, roughly on an annual basis. Now, having looked at all of that, this really does represent the end of an era. Larger projects are history along with their associated costs. Okay, the projects, these big projects, rarely fun. They're real. They're raw. It's a lot of effort. Burns out a lot of people. And through this new model, we have a chance now to change what that looks like. There's a shift of focus from these big capital expenditure projects into a more operational spending. Okay, dare I say, closer to a subscription model of funding your software. Okay, and this just the spend aspect of this is something that's of worthwhile consideration because you need to change how you budget for these things. A project or a continuous delivery approach are very different things. A project raise a lot of capital, use that up in a short cycle, no spend for a number of years, and then go raise that capital, spend that money again, or go find that capital. The continuous delivery model is more slow and steady. A little bit of spend, frequent intervals, make sure that the system is up and running. And of course, your budgets, your annual budgets, your 5-year budgets will need to change to reflect that. So that'll have to be a consideration for you as you move forward in all of this. So let's start getting into it a little bit more. So you've probably heard the term, if you've been around JD Edwards for a little while, about code current. What does that mean today? Okay, and what are the and again, like we saw on the risk and reward side, there's a few different ways to look at this. One, we can start to mitigate risk by avoiding falling behind on software. This makes it difficult to leverage the ERP to drive business change. This makes it difficult to keep the hardware, the platform, the security, the things, the browsers, and all of those things up to date because you're going to be running on older versions of the software. You can think about also what you can do with the software is always in a current state. This is going to allow you to be proactive, flexible, and adaptable. The business comes to you and says, hey, we've divested this part of our organization off. Quickly have that ready to go. Or better for you in some cases, we've acquired a new part of that we want to integrate into our JD Edwards organization. Let's get that in. Or we need to move fast and get our end users out in the field using JD Edwards. They're not going to be tied to a computer. So by having the latest code and tools ready to go, you can quickly enable that and push that functionality out. Of course, patches are still delivered via an ESU, just packaged up slightly differently. So if you've ever run a code current or an apps update project before, this is going to be very similar. Instead of doing the odd ESU here and there, there's a code current to bridge the gap to the next major release. This is just the way that there's not going to be a next major release, but the concept of code current is going to still be there. Now let's think about the technology that sits behind all of this. As we're probably well aware, the rate of technology or the rate of change in the technology space is vast. It moves very, very quickly. So the technology that JDE runs on is no different. There's no exception to that. It's constantly getting updated and enhanced. By staying up to date with the software side will allow you to stay compliant with the latest changes on databases, operating systems, browsers. And it will enable you, as we talked about earlier, to enable technology on the fly as needed by the business. So what are some of the benefits that we have as part of this, right? So the ability to take advantage of the latest enhancements developed by Oracle in partnership with the E1 customers in various industries. Think lease accounting or the grower module. I know that doesn't apply to everybody, but those are two pieces of functionality that are really driven from where the customer was coming and some of the needs that the customer had. Okay, prepare the system to be fully equipped and adaptable when business changes occur. Smaller modification impacts due to higher upgrade frequency. Reduce the risk of a major code change. Reduce customizations. Potentially shorter and more manageable implementation project cycles. All of that driving towards a better financial value, higher return on investment on your maintenance cost. Because remember, you're paying these maintenance costs, whether you're taking advantage of all those latest tools and technology or not. And also decrease your total cost of ownership. So lower technological gap between the releases, and you can just start to roll that out, and taking advantage of the new functionality just becomes part of what you do with JD Edwards. So what does that all mean for you? So we've discussed the what, some of the why behind continuous delivery. Let's talk about what this might mean for you. This is really where we're going to start to get into some of the things for you to take away and think about how you might adopt this in your organization. So first off, a chance to be proactive. Okay, it's going to force you to change your thinking about how to keep the ERP system up to date. The technology changes around the ERP systems move fast. You should too. You should be able to react to that. The capabilities within E1 evolve and are constantly being improved. Time to question, are you taking advantage of that investment to stay up to date? Again, going back to those maintenance costs. Okay. The days of being forced to upgrade should be behind us. So, if we've been around for a little while, we've often heard, I've got to upgrade. Well, why? Okay. Hardware is no longer supported. The application release isn't supported. I'm now off maintenance. I can't get the regulatory and tax and the legal fixes that I need for my business. Okay. Or we need to migrate platforms. The whole rest of the business has moved to SQL, and this is the last thing that's sitting on an AS400. Why are we doing that? So these are kind of some of the historical reasons that we've heard why we need to upgrade. And I think with this model, we can really start to think about a change, and a change where an upgrade and taking advantage of all the latest features and functionality can enable strategic advantages for your business. So on that, step back for a minute and welcome and embrace the change. Welcome and embrace this new way of doing things. Okay. And we're hoping that, going back to that last slide about having to do an upgrade or wanting to do an upgrade to enable strategic business drivers, we hope that the latter is the reason for you to do an upgrade. Okay. And this conversation that we're having is, how can we do that with E1? How can adopting a continuous delivery model provide strategic benefits to your business? So don't hide from this new way of thinking. If done right, you can embrace many of the benefits. Again, welcome, embrace these changes. It can have significant impact on you. But you better believe that this requires a strategy. Okay? So what does that mean? Be alert on what's coming. Understand the impact of changes. We'll talk about the tools in a few minutes, but having a way to understand and evaluate what's in here, what's coming down the pipe from Oracle, how can I apply these and take advantage of those things to my business through those tools. Overall, an approach. Come up with an approach. It's not this complicated. It is not like launching a rocket. This is SpaceX. We're not trying to do SpaceX. Okay, we're not developing new rocket launching technology. So keep it simple. Find a simple way to adopt this approach into your organization and anticipate that change. Don't wait and start scheduling your change. Don't wait. Instead, start scheduling your changes ahead of time. Anticipate what's coming from Oracle. There's a volume of ESUs and resource availability and business constraints that will more likely dictate how often you should apply them in your system. And then once you have an understanding of all of that, you can start to plan ahead of time as to what season in your business does it make the most sense to go through this effort on an annual basis. Okay. Make a plan that fits your business. There's analysis, there's development, there's testing. All of that's important and will have to be done. And so realistically, what's the frequency that you can do this? That will determine the frequency of a continuous delivery implementation. It's not something that's meant to be done once a week or once a month. It's just you got to plan out what that cycle is going to look like. So what's included in a code current strategy? Let's try to wrap that up a little bit here. One of the things would be a corporate policy. So get this down in writing. Have some ownership of this. So the ownership of that code current policy will help define the responsibility of it. It will define the expectations and the rules behind keeping the JD Edwards application current at your organization. Okay. Set again those clear expectations down to your business analysts, your module owners, your technical staff. All of that, they need to be playing together as part of this in order to make this work. Have regular communication, team meetings, discuss what updates are coming, how they're going to be applied, and what needs to happen once they are applied. We recommend setting up a regular schedule where you can do some ESU monitoring. So monitor the ESUs that are available for download on a regular basis. Whether you apply them or not, different story, but understand what's out there. Do an impact analysis, and we'll talk more on this towards the end of the presentation, but use the JD Edwards tools available, things like Change Assistant or object tracking usage, to understand the impact of the ESUs on your system. Okay. Really, really critical point here, but part of your strategy needs to be testing scripts and plans. So, and again, we'll touch on this in a bit, but having a repeatable testing plan, maybe with some testing scripts, an automated scripting tool, right? Understand what the inputs and the outputs are for testing. And things that you can use in here would be some of your business process documentation, some manual functional testing scripts, but those are also things that are going to have to be kept current as part of this. As you're going through, as you're doing all of that analysis, you've got a policy which states timelines and expectations. You're clearly communicating across the organization. You've got a rock solid test plan. You're going to update your documentation. Everything's going to go great. As you're doing that, look for ways in the system. Look for these little hidden gems of value. Remember a few slides ago when we talked about enabling strategic business value for your organization. That's what you got to try to look for as part of this. Look for that in the solution. More value for the business. This goes back to the why. Remember why you are doing these upgrades. You're not doing them for the sake of doing them. You're doing them to find those little hidden gems of value. How can you make JD Edwards work harder for your business? So, shifting gears a little bit into methodology. We talked about a strategy. Quite frankly, there's a fair bit of overlap into the methodology. This gets down a little bit more into the execution side of things as part of this solution. So, you're going to have to design a new structure, going way back. A new structure to your budget, a new structure to the way you resource some of these things. Okay, so a new structure that needs to be adopted by your organization to move this forward. You're going to want to evaluate change and the impact on the business and projects. Okay, the most recent fix. So you're doing that analysis, that maybe quarterly analysis of ESUs and what's coming down the pipe from Oracle. You're doing that review and that fix within that pack, it might have the best thing in it. But if it completely upsets the business, if you're working on another initiative, becomes very hard to shift this in and disrupt that and move into that space without jeopardizing the other projects around. So it needs to fit in with an overall list of projects. That's why planning in advance, sticking to a timeline, and really just adopting this methodology is going to be something that's very important. Things that you're going to think about in here: update and keep current. This relates to your business process documentation. And working with lots of customers over the years, we really see business process documentation in these three states. You've either got stacks and stacks of it that don't mean anything because you don't have a way to sort it and organize it. You've got some really nice business process documentation. You've got a system to update it. That's kind of our utopia state. Or you've got nothing. You've got a blank piece of paper. Okay. So as you're looking through this and working towards a methodology of adopting this, be real with yourself about the status of business process documentation at your organization. If you've got it, great. If you've got it and you're keeping it up to date, fantastic. Now let's look at what else we can use it for. Can you leverage it for training, for testing purposes? Right. This business process documentation, we could spend a whole other conversation on, but suffice to say that as part of your methodology for continuous delivery, make sure you've got it and make sure you've got a plan to keep it up to date. So you've done the research, you've got your business process up and running, and next, the easiest step, my CNC friends love this one. As an ex-CNC, I know it's not this easy, but we're just going to press the upgrade button. And in this case, the upgrade button means a whole bunch of things have happened. We've downloaded and installed the software. We've done the retrofitting of the development. We've pushed this out and set up a testing environment. It's obviously much more complicated than a big red button, but there's a whole technical side of this conversation that we're not going to have here as well. But we know how good our CNCs are, so we're going to just assume that the upgrade went successfully and we're ready. So next big step, test. Obviously, it's going to be a big, important part as part of what we're doing here. So make sure you... And as we're starting to think about doing this on a more regular interval, getting into that automated testing can be much more impactful at this stage. Okay. When you come out of a continuous delivery cycle and you've gone through a couple slides ago, you hit the big red button, you've upgraded. At the end of that, and before you roll that into production, you need to be able to answer that the question: are your most critical business processes tested and running smoothly? Are we going to break anything in there? Within that realm, can you focus your testing efforts on what's really changed or is new for your business, with the assurance going through all of that your employees and vendors will still get paid, or on the other side, that you can send invoices out to make sure you still get paid as an organization? Okay. Again, conversation for another day. Fair number of tools in the marketplace, lots of organizations out there that are reacting to this new reality of JD Edwards. Again, we can help navigate that part of the conversation. Send us a note and we can help out with that. But this could be another whole discussion. Either way, whatever testing looks like at your organization, you come out of that and it's going to be some training. Okay. So it's in, you've tested, let's get to training. Okay. Not so much at the gym like this, although I wouldn't blame you. Okay. But training. The users need to know the capabilities that are going to be delivered with this system. So once you get through all of that, you're really ready to start using the system. You're taking advantage of all the latest and greatest. Let's swing a little bit into the technical side here and really take a look at some of the tools that are available here. So most of what you're going to find out about what's in the upcoming releases is in Learn JD. Fantastic resource. If you haven't checked it out, go set it as a favorite in your browser. tons and tons of valuable information, from getting very technical to staying at a high level and discussing strategically how some of the features and functionality might work for your organization. You've got on the Oracle support site, you've got the Oracle minimum technical requirements, which is under the certifications tab. You can search for JD Edwards. You can search for the tools release that you're on or that you're going to. Lots of really good information here about which browsers are supported, databases, platforms in the background. So familiarize yourself with that and make sure that you're not racing ahead when you go to enable a new browser at your organization. We've got the Update Center. So again, on Oracle support, a way for you to search for ESUs, for tools releases, for update packs. This is also where you're going to download Change Assistant. Next topic, quick little peek into Change Assistant. Massively important tool. This is where you go to search for ESUs by object, by ESU name, by date, any number of things. That's where you can search, where you can start to pull that into your JD Edwards system and start running through that impact analysis. Again, impact analysis runs from full client or deployment server, but then the usage and customization data can be viewed through your HTML instances. So it can be a trade-off between a technical task that the CNC group does to prepare this information, and then the end users or the business analysts, the functional side, can consume the data through HTML. And if you're on one of the more recent JD Edwards tools releases as part of 9.2, and I would really encourage you to go through and enable object tracking. Of course, with the caveat to also set up the purge jobs on the back end. This is going to collect a lot of data, but incredibly valuable and powerful information. What we're looking at here is just the front end UX1 page for it, but all of this data is stored in tables that you can then use to compare against data from Change Assistant. Okay, what does it do at a high level here? Which objects are being used on your system? By which users? Do you have any sort of peak loads? So even moving outside of continuous delivery, some benefits that we have there. Starts to help you understand which customizations are used and unused on your system. And then ultimately, by tying all this information together, what impact will any one update have on your environment? Okay, and so the overall approach that we want, tying it back to continuous delivery, is to identify the most used apps on your system. And this would be then the starting point for impact analysis, both from a technical perspective of, hey, what do I need to retrofit, but also from a testing perspective, and where do I need to focus my efforts when I get into testing. Instead of looking at every single object that comes out of the ESU impact analysis, this will help you to narrow the focus as to what's the most used applications and on my system, and then build a testing plan to suit that, to make sure that your most critical and most often used applications are being addressed through that testing cycle. So for ERP-One, putting more and more thought into, again, how we can help customers with this whole process, right? And so there's multiple layers that fit on this, and so let's take a walk around the circle of continuous delivery and take a quick peek at the five main pillars. So the first step, obviously we've talked about the last few slides, the ESU impact analysis. We've developed a methodology to determine the true impact of going code current with your organization. So this is the kind of stuff that would provide a real scope of work needed in the upcoming steps. and it allows you to evaluate the effort against the impact for you instead of just looking at some of the more raw data. Okay, this is something that can be run anytime you want to start the analysis, and will help you plan the project. Again, understanding the scope and where you need to focus efforts. Okay, so impact analysis, true impact from ERP-One, get you that starting point. Okay, now we're ready to kick off this project. The very first step that you're going to have in there is retrofitting. You're going to want to get in, retrofit the code that matters to you. Again, tying it back to that true impact. You're only going to go in and redevelop any code that's actually in use at your organization. If it's not in use anymore, it's fallen off. It was a customization that was written 5 years ago that's not currently used. We're not going to touch that, and we'll have the data to make that analysis. Once the retrofit's done, we're going to get into a testing cycle. Again, like we were talking about here with business process documentation, automated testing scripts, knowing what makes a test successful or not. Those are all things that will fold into this testing pillar of the continuous delivery. Want to implement? So again, that's our big red button. There's going to be a part that happens sort of before testing. Testing will sign off, and then we'll finalize that up into production. And finally, a big point here around educating and adopting some of the new functionality that's out there. Said it before here, we don't want to just put this code in and just say, okay, great, we're compliant now, we're up to date. We want to be able to take advantage of some of that new feature and functionality. And so going through, educating your user base, adopting some of that technology is actually a really key factor as part of the whole process, the whole continuous delivery process. So again, the impact analysis at the beginning, we've got some methodologies in there and an approach that can really help identify what the true impact is to your organization. The whole concept of just going to Oracle and saying, what are all the ESUs that have come out since I went to 9.2 can seem extremely daunting. And it is, if you look at it from a raw data perspective. But lining it up against some of the usage data in your system will be able to help, again, scope out what that project looks like, scope out what the testing effort needs to be, all of that making up a predictable project and delivered through a true impact here. So all of that information consolidated down into one place. I want to end here with just a quick conversation about a timeline. And this is a question we've had. Well, how often should I be doing this? Here's a sample continuous delivery model that happens over a year. The dots across the top really made up, but really meant to show that, hey, there's about a quarter in between a feature pack update from Oracle and an annual update. Whether those dots are in the right spots on the right months, kind of irrelevant, but basically shows us that there are 4 feature packs as well as an annual update. And what that ties back to is the first line. So doing a quarterly review of what's available in the whole package of ESUs or that feature pack, and can really start from a functional perspective to help you get an understanding of what's out there and start to think about how you might take advantage of that. If you do that over 3 quarters and then you get into that last quarter, we can get into that impact analysis. So what is that going to mean to our project, and how can we build out a project that we have a good understanding of what the retrofit and the testing and the implementation effort is. And that becomes then the next 3 lines here, where we'll do that impact analysis, set the scope of the work, do the retrofitting effort, do the testing. Of course, there's going to be a fair amount of overlap in there. It's not doesn't need to be a dependent task as a big block. Go through the implementation, make sure that we hit our production system and it's ready to go. And then you'll notice at the end, I've left a big long line for education and adoption. And so the continuous delivery model, the first, say, an 8 to 10 to 12 week project where you do the analysis, the retrofitting, the testing, and the implementation, and you do that as part of your regular job, not a full carve out of 2 months. That happens. And then you've got the rest, the next 9, 10, 11 months to go through, educate your staff on that new feature, and start to adopt those new features. And it's a big long line, and it goes throughout the whole year, because it's not meant to, as soon as you've implemented, to say, okay, well, now we need to adopt this piece of it. But because it's there, it's something that you can continuously think about throughout the year. So to recap, continuous innovation is a good thing, and you could take advantage of it through Oracle's continuous delivery model. But you need to understand how this will work for your organization. You need to develop a methodology and a strategy for how you are going to approach this and what makes sense for your organization. Make sure that you can derive value from doing this kind of project. Use the new features. Don't just do it to stay compliant. Plan it out. Understand the impacts of how the business uses E1. Retrofit it, test it, deliver it, and take advantage of the next greatest thing that's part of that code. As we've seen, there's lots of moving parts, lots of things to consider, lots of data and info to gather and evaluate. But you plan it out properly, this thing will come together and be a beautiful thing, something that your business users, your end users, will really start to take advantage of. And as a business, you'll be able to leverage JD Edwards to drive strategic value. That's all we have for today. Thanks very much for joining us, taking the time to listen to this. I'll leave my contact info up here real quick. Email, phone number, either way. If you have more questions on this, get a hold of me, get a hold of somebody at ERP-One. Happy to walk you through this. Thanks again, and have a great day.